and welcome back to Frontend Hero. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is creating this interactive map here, but not with Google Maps, but with Leaflet.js. Right, so very quickly, just want to address the fact that we're not using the Google Maps API. Why is that? It's a very good question. Well, basically I was creating this heat map tutorial with the Google Maps API. And then basically I found out that this functionality was deprecated as of last month of May 2025. Apparently it wasn't being used that much, so Google decided to axe it or sunset it. So here we are with Leaflet.js. Anywho, I seem to have found a new favorite mapping tool. So it's actually open source, it's free, and yeah, you don't need to go through the whole process of getting API keys and this and that. So with that out of the way, let's go through the actual project we'll be creating. Now, I'm going to break this down into 5 or 6 parts, not sure exactly yet, but let's show what the end product will look like. Okay, so we have our map, and if we zoom out a bit, we can see the kind of overview of the heat map. And as we zoom in, the heat map kind of dissipates more and more. And then eventually they become pins or markers. And from here, we can kind of get an idea of what crimes were committed in what location. We can filter by date periods, just like that. And then we'll zoom back out to show the overview. Zoom back in, and the markers are in different positions because it's all new kind of data. We can also filter by type of crime. If a crime category is less than 100 markers, it will show the markers. If it's over 100, like violent crime, it will show a heat map that we need to zoom into again. I just thought that was the most usable kind of way to illustrate the crime on the map without being kind of overloaded with so many markers. So that's kind of it. Click a marker and we get an overview of that type of crime. And let's see the data that we'll be working with. So data.police.uk provide these APIs for free. And then the one we're going to be using specifically is the street level crimes API. Now, there's only really 3 parameters that we need to use. That is date, latitude, and longitude. There's the endpoint there. And then down below, you can see a sample output from that endpoint. So we've got crime category, we've got longitude, latitude, we've got street name, outcome, and months, stuff like that. So we'll pull all this data into this map now over this series, and we'll basically make this very pretty looking interface. But first up, we're going to have to pull in the API and play around with some data. So that's coming up next. Alrighty, so let's pull in this endpoint in the right-hand screen, and then we can pull in the data and start playing around with it. So first things first, we're going to create a script tag to hold our little scripts. And the very first thing I usually do is to basically wait until the DOM is fully loaded. So we're going to say document.addEventListener, DOM content loaded, and then inside of this function, we can start having a bit of fun. So once the DOM has fully loaded, the very first thing we need to do is to pull in this API endpoint. So we're going to declare a variable, and we're going to call it API URL and give it that endpoint from earlier, which is this guy here. So if we copy all of this and then paste it in between these single quotes here, let's just make some room. Okay, so let's close off that other quote there. And now instead of the latitude and longitude that come with that API endpoint, we're going to get a new one. So into Google Maps, I'm going to type in Greenwich. There it is there, London. And then basically I'm just going to zoom out a bit. Greenwich Park is fine. So that looks good to me. Happy with that. Then I'll simply go up to the address bar and I'll copy the latitude and longitude. Okay, so with those 2 values there, I'm going to pop in and change the lat value first. And then I'll copy the second value, which is the longitude, and then change that there. So instead of the default location, we now have Greenwich Park for our crime data. Okay, so let's copy this here now and see what we get in the browser. So if we create a new tab and paste that in, we can see all of the results there all ready for our picking. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's working fine. Now let's move on to the next step. And just very quickly, I'm just going to create a console.log message just to say fetching data from the API URL. And let's have a look in the console. And already we have a syntax error. Okay, so change that period to a comma. And we can see there in the console that it's fetching the data from the API just fine. And now actually let's go and fetch all the data. So we're going to say fetch and pop in the API URL variable. Then we'll say, well, then wait for the response. And then with the help of an if statement, we can check here if the request was unsuccessful. So we'll say if response.ok. So if it's actually failed, we'll log a little message and we'll say console.error API responded with, and then the response code. And we can see this error message here. If I change some of the API endpoints, say the latitude there, we can see the request is 400 or a malformed URL. So that little check there works fine. Then next up, we need to just return an empty object. And why do we need to do that? Because the next then method will still run. And if it gets undefined and tries to access properties, etc., the app will basically crash. So it's a nice little safety net. Right, now, next section. So if the request was successful, we want to get the JSON. So we're going to say response.json and then return it. So it's ready for our next step. And our next step is to actually handle the JSON. So we'll create a new then method, and then we'll pop in our data value, which is basically all of the JSON. And inside here, we're going to create a new console.log message. So we'll say fetched data, and we'll include this, this JSON. And if we inspect our console, we can see all of the JSON. So we can see that in groups of 100 batches, antisocial behavior is the first few results. And if we scroll down here, the next few are robbery, shoplifting, and so on. So if we expand that yet again, we can see all of the kind of data we can play with: location, category, street, and so on. So I think at this point, let's try and pull in some of this individual data here. So I think the first one we're going to do is try and pull in the category. Well, first of all, let's do a little check. If data.length is greater than 0, so if results were found, and then in here, we're going to say console.log first crime category is, and then it is data, the first result, which is 0, a 0-based index, dot category. Okay. All right, just like that. Okay, so the first crime category is antisocial behavior. So we can access the data very, very easily, which is very cool. And if we change the value there to 230, we can see a totally different record, totally different category. So yeah, I'll already bring it back to 0. And now let's pull in another piece of data. So let's pull in the latitude and longitude. So we're going to say first crime location. And instead of category, we're going to say location. Let's just have a peek there. So there's location, and it's just latitude and longitude. So location.latitude, and then we'll say location.longitude. So copy and paste that there, change the longitude, and now we have those two values. Oh yeah, now we have those two values there. So we can copy those, go back into Google Maps, and we can paste them in and see what result we get. So this crime in particular is just based to the west of Greenwich Park there. So that works very, very nicely indeed. And continuing on this little script here, I'd say next up, we just want to check if there's an error. We'll say, so in conjunction with our if statement, we'll say else console.log no crime, maybe no crime data found for maybe selected month and or location, just like that. Right, cannot spell. Okay, And the very last thing we need to do here is just to catch any errors should they arise. So we'll say catch the error, and we're going to console.error it. So console.error, maybe fetch error. Yeah. And the value, which is just error. Okay, let's change that again and have a peek. So there we go there, a bit more kind of information to hand if anything fails. So that's the guts of pulling in this data from the police API for street crime based in Greenwich Park or just around. So yeah, next part is going to be actually building up a little map with Leaflet.js, but this was just to kind of get you comfortable pulling in data from this police API. So that's it from me. Hope this was useful. In the next video, we're going to be creating the map with Leaflet.js and subsequent videos pulling in markers and heat maps. So yeah, if you'd like to see that, please do subscribe and you'll be notified when they're ready. Right, catch you guys later.